Yep.
Done. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It is October 21st. It is Wednesday evening for the bulk of us, depending on who's going to be attending and, of course, watching later. Welcome to season 2 of A Syndicate Talks. And if you didn't manage to find season 1 to start with, it's really easy. You just need to go to YouTube, type in A Syndicate Talks in the search engine. You're going to find it. There are 14 episodes, almost 15 hours of prime business education being brought to you by the members inside a syndicate, sharing what they do absolutely best. And I'm incredibly excited for my friend that's going to be talking tonight, Mr. Justin Dianarine. And Justin, welcome. Syndicate Talks as always. Tonight he's doing a masterclass, but to give you a tiny bit of background first before he begins. Who here has had an opportunity, and for everybody on our session already, who's had a chance to talk to Justin or has some concept or idea of what Justin does professionally for a living? Justin is an organizational behavior psychologist, which means that he works with individuals, groups, and companies to make sure that, one, people can fit and integrate really well. Two, that communication and interpersonal skills development are fostered, grown, and developed appropriately. And three, that when it comes to conflict inside of businesses itself, people transitioning in and out of businesses or moving within businesses themselves, find the best possible landing spot. It's a really fancy way to say that he works with people to make sure that people get along better, that people can maximize themselves, that they can learn the absolute best about themselves, because when you know thyself, prove thyself. Now, where some people would take certain instances in this world, organizations, coaching, motivating speakers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, we tend to think of these things as soft, intangible, as something that does not have a rooting in perhaps science. But make no mistake, when it comes to psychology, there are decades, centuries even of research that goes to the way, the mechanic of how the human brain works and how it interacts. And part of that, when it comes to Justin and his job, is ability to find the best way for people that might have very differing opinions, different ways of thinking, viewing things, and being able to bring them together and build harmony. So tonight, with the masterclass that we have coming on, it's about personality and communication. It's about knowing who you are first and foremost, because if you know who you are and you know what you do and why you do it, your ability to translate that into communicating in a different way with other people improves. Imagine for a moment being able to say to somebody, can you give me 1 moment? I got to write a couple of notes. I have to process, and I have to put some information in order in my head. Imagine the number of times in your life, if that's the way you think primarily, especially when you're forced to absorb and sort information, how many misunderstandings would be removed because something as small as that is a choice that you make to communicate with somebody else. The next would be the impatience that comes with some people because their task orientation, in other words, their ability to decide what they're going to do next very, very rapidly. You will sometimes encounter people in life, or perhaps even for yourself, where you're like, yeah, I've got it. I really wish people would just shut up because I got it. I got the point and it's time to move on. Imagine being able to recognize that in yourself first, which means that you can once more convey it to other people, which means that you're in a spot where you understand more than enough, and let's move. Let's get, or more importantly, when you recognize that trait in somebody else. Now, for us to understand us is critically important, but next we want to be able to extend that to being able to communicate better with people. The moment you have a grasp and a grounding on how people are going to retain, attract, hold on, disseminate, sort, or otherwise use information, use feedback, use the language, the inflection, the body language, all these unspoken cues that we give off and the way they're going to process them, it begins to open up the door where you become a far more effective communicator. And the moment you can communicate far better with other people in your life, the more likely you are, first of all, selfishly to get what you want, but secondly, selflessly to be of real service to other people. So with that from an introduction, Syndicate Talks Season 2, Episode 1, Mr. Justin Dianarine. Justin, welcome. Thank you very much for bringing this in, bringing your expertise to this. And from there, I'm going to shut up to listen and allow Justin to do what he does absolutely best. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you're in for a treat. And for those that join us in the future through technology, do not hesitate to reach out and communicate with Justin. Justin, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Mitch. You actually covered off a lot of points in my introduction. So the only thing that I will add is the goal tonight is to give you a framework to be able to do all this. Similar framework to what I use when I'm trying to figure out how best to communicate with other people. I'm essentially going to teach you that. And then once you know where you fit in within this framework, then you can figure out how others fit in. And what I'm going to do is, there we go. Can everyone see that?
Yep,
A couple
we can.
thumbs up. Okay, perfect. So there we go. Now I can see everybody. Awesome. Okay, so what we're going to take a look today at is essentially personality and communication. And we have two goals for this evening: to learn about individual differences in personality, what makes everybody unique, and to sometimes answer the question, how does this person actually function? And we've probably asked this of ourselves, about others quite a bit, not sure exactly how this person actually is able to operate. And this might give you a framework. I'll give you a quick story. One of my best friends in high school, I always wanted to strangle him. Am I allowed to say that while we're recording? But always wanted to strangle him. And it wasn't until we were in our 30s that I finally got him to do this same personality test. And all of a sudden, everything made sense. His personality is the complete opposite of mine. We're still good friends to this day. He's now living here in Edmonton also. So it's just really funny, but we never could quite agree or understand each other. The other thing that I want you guys to take away is some strategies, and I'm gonna spell these out pretty thoroughly near the end of the workshop. Strategies for communicating with other people who may not understand things the same way that you do, or who may process information differently from the way that you do. So why is this important? And in the workplace, when we're dealing with other people, clients, colleagues, anybody in a work setting, um, there's a lot of research out there that suggests that teams with similar styles, or people who have very similar communication styles, are able to perform tasks much more quickly, because the communication is very well aligned. They experience less conflict because they always understand each other. They tend to like each other more because they get along more easily. They also listen to each other more often. So if there's anybody else coming in with a different perspective or a different view, people tend to listen to those who are similar to them. We call that the like me bias. Now, people with a diverse style, with a different style, when people get together with different styles, they take more time to perform a task or to complete a task. They experience more potential conflict because they're not able to communicate with each other clearly. But in the end, because they've brought different perspectives, they actually produce better outcomes. And they've done different studies looking at profitability of companies based on diversity within their board of directors, um, uh, performance ratings or subjective performance in terms of sales within teams at different organizations. The key is that they need to be able to communicate more effectively. And I've gone in and done this same workshop with some of those companies because they figured out we've got the diversity, but we don't know how to harness this. So it's really about figuring out how to harness that diversity. Now at home, and I know like work's not going to be everything to everybody. At home, communication is pretty important still too. And for those who are with their significant other, uh, living with their significant other, have you ever said the wrong thing to your significant other and the result turned out to be something like this? Just yeah, yeah. I'm seeing a few people. It has not panned out sometimes. So there is a bit of an importance in actually being able to communicate clearly within just your own personal life with others around you. So that's the goal. Those are the goals for tonight. So the first thing I want to do is jump into a quick activity to show you what I mean by different communication styles. So I'm going to bring up a slide or a word on the slide. And what I want you to do is you're okay to unmute yourself. I'm going to annotate the screen. I want you to tell me what's the first word that comes to mind when you see this word on the screen. Okay, ready? Well, if it would come up, there we go. So start calling them out for me.
The final
Personal.
frontier.
Astronaut.
Leader.
Hey.
Quiet.
Empty room.
Quiet.
Quiet. I heard astronaut.
There's also a bunch in the chat, Justin.
Oh, okay. Can you read them out for me? I can't see the chat right now.
Cadets, outer, the final frontier, stars, personal, jam, heater, time.
He doesn't type that fast, honey.
I've got it. Jam. There's time.
Randy's was the best, which is void.
Void.
Oh yeah.
Awesome, Randy. Anything else? Any other?
Heater.
Any?
Vast.
Sorry, Barbie Lee.
Heater. Space heater. I have mine on.
Heater. Vast. So you can see, and the whole point of this, we've gotten things like thank you, Matt Hewson, Final Frontier. We've gotten things like Captain Kirk, and you can see the different themes, the different themes that are coming out of this. Not everybody's jumping to the same conclusion or to the same meaning when I say one simple word. And that's a very powerful lesson. I'm just going to clear all. And that's a very powerful thing, because when you're communicating, when you're delivering a message such as what I'm doing right now, there's really two people involved in that interaction. The sender and what's on the screen, your method and means of sending messages make up your interactional style. That's a very psychological and scientific way of saying what you're saying is what you mean. However, what the other person hears or interprets out of it is based on their understanding, their perspective, their approach. And really, in the end, the meaning of what you said resides with the person who's listening, not with what you've actually said, what you've communicated. You understand it in what you were trying to communicate, but others have to understand that also. So this is where we get to the idea of a framework, because we want to ensure that everybody is able to communicate in a message that's meaningful to the receiver in a way that's meaningful to them. And this is where we dive a little bit into your personality results to see where. So I'm just today we're gonna go through, if any of you have heard of the Myers-Briggs or the MBTI. I'm sure, given that you've taken the assessment, you know that's what you took. Hopefully, if you took something else, I'm not sure what to tell you, because I've generated MBTI reports for all of you, so that's what we've got. So we're gonna take a look at the Myers-Briggs. And really what it's useful for is understanding your default style, understanding how this style impacts your work and your life in terms of your communication especially. And it gives you a framework for understanding others. So as we go through this workshop today, I want you to remember two things. We're not assessing your skills or your intelligence. That's not what tonight is about. It's about understanding you. And there's no such thing as better or worse, and no no matter what your result is coming out, it doesn't mean that you can do certain jobs better or worse than other people, or you're more of a fit than anyone else for what you're doing based on your type. It's simply to describe how you operate. Now, I throw out a term default style, which is very vague. And it was vague on purpose because I want to help you understand that. So the first thing I want you to do, does everybody have like a pen and paper in front of them that they can work with? So grab a pen and paper, and the first thing I want you to do is with your writing hand, write your signature, the hand that you would normally use. So how did that feel? How would you describe doing that?
Like a habit. It's just
Like a habit? Yep.
Yeah.
Comfortable.
Comfortable.
Fluid.
Okay. Fluid. Sorry, Laurette?
Just easy peasy. Like, yeah, I got this.
Yep. Felt natural, right? You didn't have to think about it. Now what I want you to do right under that,
Oh.
sign your signature with your other hand. And if yours turns out anything like mine, it will look like a child just scribbled it. So don't worry. Now
I have discovered I don't know how to spell my name with my left hand.
I'm left-handed,
Okay.
so it always looks like a child wrote it. So
Okay. So you should be signing with your right hand then, Jackson, for this one. So how did that feel? What's the experience of that?
awkward.
Awkward. Yep.
It just feels like I'm like learning how to write again. Like I'm like 5 and I'm like,
Yep.
Super bizarre.
Okay. Took a lot of effort, right? So the point that I want to make is consider your default preference as writing with your main hand. It's not that you can't write with your other hand if you have to. It just takes more effort. So as we go through the different dichotomies, which you're about to see in a second here, remember, it's not that you're locked into one of them. You can use both. There's just one that you're more comfortable with, one that's more natural. So in that hint, the 4 different dichotomies are extroversion and introversion. So Myers-Briggs theory describes it as where do you get your energy from, or how do you get your energy? It's more so how comfortable or how much you like to interact, or how you like to interact with others. What's your approach to interacting with others? How do you recharge? That's where the energy part comes from. Sensing versus intuition, what type of information do you prefer to use? Do you like to start with the details and move your way to the big picture? Or do you like to start with the big picture and extract the details from there? Thinking versus feeling, what process do you use to make your decisions? Are you on the thinking side? Do you trust facts, figures, logic first, or do you start with the feeling side? How does this impact the people around me? How does this impact the values? How does this interact with my values? So there's 2 different sources of information that you can start with for your decision making, and it's not that you can't use both, it's that there's one that comes to mind quicker. And finally, judging versus perceiving. And judging is not being judgmental. I think there's a misconception there. I wouldn't want to call it nice, but it's not being judgmental. It's how do you deal with the world around you? So we're going to explore these 4 dichotomies a little bit more. And Matt McLean asked a really good question. When are we going to get our reports? And what I want you to do over the first part of this workshop, this is where we're going to be getting into breakout rooms and experiencing what it's like to do some of these things. I want you, as you go through at each section, I'm going to stop and say, okay, when we're done extroversion, introversion, write down E or I. Which one do you think you are? We're going to go through almost like a little bit of a game and see if you can figure out what your personality type is. Then you're going to get the answer through the report afterwards, and we'll see if those line up. If they don't line up, we're going to explore some reasons why. Make sense to everyone? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So we're going to start off with introversion and extroversion. So somebody with an where's my mouse? There we go. Oops. So somebody with an extroversion preference, they prefer to get they prefer to be action oriented. They prefer to get straight to the action. Somebody with an introversion preference may spend a little bit more time reflecting on things. Extroverts tend to be a little bit more expressive. They like to gain energy from interaction, and they like to have many interests, but maybe they don't go so deep into them. Whereas somebody with an introversion preference, they like to think things through a little bit more, say before they respond. They like to get deeper into their interests. So a comparison that's used is that the extroverted robot likes to gain energy from interacting. So they're solar powered. They're out there dealing with other people, they're talking to other people, and that's how they're recharging. So here's my question for you. How many of you after a night out feel more energized when you get home than when you left? Got a few hands up? A few people nodding. I see a few people shaking their head no. So the introversion side of things, when you're looking to recharge, you're looking to just sit to say be home and plug in a little bit, just to really recharge and spend a little bit of time reflecting, doing a quiet activity. How many of you find a little bit more appeal in that for recharging your battery? I'm seeing a few hands up, nods. Okay. So what I want you to do for this next activity is to actually experience both extroversion and introversion in kind of a conversation. So I'm going to put everybody into breakout rooms. And we're going to give you 7 minutes, and not like a Mitch 7 minutes where it actually turns out to be like 5.8. We're going to give you an actual 7 minutes. Now I'm going to give you a topic that I want you guys to talk about. And each time you contribute, you got to type an X in the chat. You can contribute up to 3 times. Typically, I give you poker chips, but we're not in a room together, so I can't hand out poker chips to you right now. So the typing an X in the chat will be the equivalent to throwing a poker chip into the middle of the table. So you can only contribute 3 times, but your goal is to try to use all 3 of those tokens. Now, if you say or a lot, those all count as contributions. So if you do those, you're going to burn through your tokens very quickly. And if somebody else does it and doesn't type an X in the chat, you got to call them out on it. Now, calling them out doesn't count towards your contributions. That makes sense to everybody?
Nodding of the head counts, or just verbal?
We'll say just verbal. So that gives you a little bit of leeway. Okay, so I'm going to...
Justin, is it like a sentence or a thought?
A thought. So it can be more than one sentence, but as soon as you stop that thought and say somebody else starts talking, that's the end of your contribution.
Okay.
Okay. So let's set up the breakout rooms. We have, 18 people. So you're going to be in rooms of 3, and I'm going to give you 7 minutes for it.
Is there a topic?
Yeah, the topic's about to come up next.
I just need to chill.
Okay. That should be everything. So the topic is, sorry, I'm just trying to get my PowerPoint back. There we go. The topic is when giving money, everybody can see my screen, yeah? Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So when giving money to charity, which ones would you give priority to and why? Okay. 7 minutes and your rooms are open. Ashley's away. Can you? You are gonna have to join that room, Mitch, because poor Jessica's in there by herself. So
There, I was talking the whole time with mute off. Or if we've got a room that
I can, yeah, I can move her to room 6. There we go. Okay, that. Hopefully she joins room 6.
once they're in the breakout rooms, when you move her, they move automatically. They don't. It doesn't come up as an option. It just think.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
It says not. It has her. There we go. It's now moved her. Perfect. Because you and Ashley ended up in the room assigned to the room with her, and Ashley's not there, and you're here. So
That's because she's waiting for Justin's profile to pop up so she can stare at it over his shoulder. That's what's going on. Good work, bud.
Thank you.
Good work. Really
So
good.
They've got a couple minutes left. Sorry, I had to take the poke while I had it.
Why not? You're at the front of the room, and the rest of us are fair game. So
There we go.
I had a buddy of mine start a company called Donaire Task Force. I am almost curious enough to follow that page.
Donaire Task Force.
Donaire Task Force. I'm like, okay. So how do you think it's going this evening so far?
I think it's going okay. I think once we get into the activities, that's when people start to kind of come alive a little bit more. So this one's usually the one where it's you start to see that glaze over exit, because the first bit's just talking. So once they get into the activities, I'm just sad, and I'll even mention this, that we can't do the one for judging perceiving that I normally do,
Right?
because it involves Play-Doh.
Yes.
So my typical task for judging perceiving involves Play-Doh. I could not get Play-Doh to translate virtually that well, so we'll.
Now you say that, but if you want to look at, I mean, I know we're recording this, so we'll have to fuzz some of this out later. But if you want to find a great way to do that, and I mean integration into events in the future as they're doing things like that, but where you've got enough time so people pay, they enroll, they get stuff sent to them. I should book a meeting between you and my wife because she's an OT.
Okay. Matt's asking for help. I will be back in a second.
Yeah.
Two of yours, diabetes and stollery, just because I have a lot of family members that are diabetics. Stollery, just because of the children, was fortunate none of my kids had to go, but my grandchildren, I'm hoping that never happens. And STARS ambulance. Every time I hear that or I see them fly by, my heart just breaks, and we give to them every year, 100%. Mm-hmm.
How's everything going here?
Good. Quick question.
Sure.
So Greg started, made a statement about the charity that he picked. Why? Then Lynn asked him a question of why.
Mm-hmm.
Does that take her chip?
That does. That is a contribution.
Okay, that's
okay,
what
so I can't. Yeah. I can't talk anymore now?
If you've used your 3.
Shit. Okay. Well,
Good
guys,
luck.
What we need to know
okay. The floor is all
Alrighty.
yours, Matt and Greg.
when, like, because I mean, in 7 minutes we'll all be done our 3 chips. I would assume.
That's the hope. You'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
All right. Okay,
So, okay, perfect.
Okay, I have a question again, Justin. Before you
Sure.
go. So once we make the statement of the charity and why we would choose that charity, what do we talk about now?
But you got to figure that out now.
Okay, so are we trying to keep a conversation going? Is that what we're doing right now, or
Once you use all 3, or you feel the conversation's done, you can just come back to the main room.
okay?
It's really just to get that experience. It's really to get to where Lynn got to.
Just using the chip.
Yeah, basically. So, okay, cool.
Thank you.
Really curious, just really curious. So,
Yeah. No, that's fair. Are you not the host of the meeting?
No.
Oh.
Justin
I
keeps refusing to add me as a host.
I keep forgetting.
He doesn't want to give the power over.
I'm not giving Mitch power.
I keep forgetting.
Your other accounts in?
I'm here now.
The 2
Okay.
Ashleys. Yeah.
2 Ashleys, yes.
The 2 Ashleys.
So I'm gonna close out the rooms. 7:07. Okay.
Are you going with on Mitch time or real time?
On by the time the 1 minute goes, it will be real time, not Mitch time.
So for future reference, when we're recording and we do breakout rooms, does this part get sectioned out?
Well,
There we go.
the main room continues getting recorded.
But when you post.
Oh,
Okay.
we got to video edit some things out.
No, no, actually it follows whoever the primary host is, it follows.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So where Justin followed into the breakout room for a moment, it follows him. So
So question, we used up our like 3 X's each, and then
Okay.
we like sat there for a minute, and then we started talking again.
Okay. Well, you got through them, so that was the intention.
Because we were a little bit unclear as to the we're like, okay, we don't want to just sit here and like sort of stare at each other. That's a little awkward.
Yeah.
So
No, that's fair. It really depends on the group. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit more. It looks like everybody's out at this point. So I've had a few questions already. So let's talk about that activity a little bit. So did you use all your tokens, and how quickly?
We all
Modern.
took turns.
Sorry?
We just all took turns talking. So we all
Okay.
used tokens. Yeah.
Okay. Lynn, what happened to you?
There is not enough tokens. There's just
Lynn ran out pretty quickly.
there were so many questions, like
And that's the point. Using the tokens, so you probably felt a little constrained by that, right? And Lynn, how did it feel when you had to sit there and you couldn't actually ask anything?
well, I didn't like it because then Matt proceeded to tell us that he broke his arm on the same monkey bars that's on the Trailer Park Boys. So, and I had to stay quiet during that. But it's hard. It's really hard.
Yep. So do you wish you had more tokens?
Yes.
Yeah. How about somebody else? Is there anybody who didn't get through the tokens or took a really long time to get through the tokens?
I could have not used all 3 of my tokens if I didn't speak. I observed for the first minute or 2, listened to everybody speak, and Then when I spoke, I made sure I didn't do any ums, and I made sure it was a longer sentence.
So were you trying to hold back a little bit maybe on the tokens to be able to get the most out of your contributions possible?
Yes.
Okay.
I had
Perfect.
Barbally in my room. I thought she's gonna go blah 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 blah. She was real quiet. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because it took her a while to finish her tokens. Wes was the one that was like, I'm taking control of this conversation. I'm like, that's fascinating. So I had an interesting conversation with both of them.
Okay. So
Were
so
we
let's
supposed to use tokens?
Yeah, you only had 3 of them. That was it.
I kept track for you, Wes. Actually, I had 2 sheets of paper. It's all good.
We used a lot. We went over. I think all 3 of us went over. So it's like, it is what it is.
It is what it is in that case. But really what I was trying to, this activity is, the aim is to get those different experiences. Exactly what Matt was talking about, where he's like, I held back a little bit and I thought through what I was going to say and then tried to make the most out of it. And then also the experience that Lynn had, where she burned through her tokens very quickly and then had to sit there for a bit and introvert for a little bit. So that's where we start to get the extroversion and introversion. Now, there may have been some folks, and this does happen sometimes, where they have to, at the very end, use out the rest of their tokens because they haven't really contributed much. They've been waiting for everybody else to contribute. They've been maybe thinking it through a little bit. So some of you may have experienced that, where I was holding on to it a little bit to think it through, and then I had to burn through all of them right at the end. So different experiences with introversion and extroversion, and we come down to how communication can be approached, and this is jumping the gun a little bit, how extroverts and introverts like to communicate. And what you'll see is extroverts tend to talk out loud. They, as they're thinking, they tend to talk, and this is where some extroverts actually lose all their tokens like right off the bat, because they're talking out their thought process and it just burns all their tokens. Introverts tend to like to think things through a little bit. So if you've ever worked with somebody, a customer, a colleague, where you sat down and you asked them a question and you can see the gears turning in their head. They've stopped, they're thinking about it, and then when they've come to that right, exactly what they want to say, then they say it. That's somebody who's taking an introverted approach. If you deal with someone like me, when you ask me a question, I start talking it out loud, and you get literally the verbal diarrhea, and then eventually I come to my finalized answer. So this tends to be, you can figure out what that person's communication preferences, what their communication styles are, to some degree, on how much they verbalize and how much they stop to process internally before verbalizing. Does that make sense? Yeah, seeing quite a few nodding heads. So at this point, this is where I'm going to say, if you had to guess which one you are, extroverted or introverted, which one is it? So write down E or I somewhere around where you did the signatures. Write down E or I, note it down somewhere. And then when we get through everything, we'll figure out exactly which style you are. Okay, and as we go through that, let's jump into sensing and intuition. So this is the type of information that you trust. This is the type of information that you start with. Sensors tend to start with the details. They like to know the facts, they like to know the specifics, the practical, they like observations. They focus on the here and now. Intuitives, they like to seek out those new ideas. They tend to talk more theoretical. They anticipate the future a little bit. They like to think about what's going to happen moving forward, that bigger picture. And they like to use conceptual frameworks. So Myers-Briggs, developed by an intuitive, clearly, because they create a conceptual framework to capture all this. And a lot of Myers-Briggs people who develop it, people who write the reports, who write books on it, tend to be intuitives because it's a framework that appeals to them. So my comparison is that the sensing is like a micro lens. It homes in on something. So when you're looking at a flower garden, this is the sensor's world. They're focusing in on a particular scene. What's going on here? When you take a look at that same flower garden from the intuitive's perspective, this is what they're seeing. The garden as a whole. It's not that you can't zoom in as an intuitive to that particular flower, or as a sensor you can't zoom out and afterwards appreciate the whole forest, essentially the whole garden. It's where you start. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second because the next activity is coming up. So in chat, I'm going to drop a PDF in here. And so I want you all just to download the PDF as soon as my mouse will sorry. Everyone in meeting. There we go. Mitch private messaged me and that messed up everything. So only Mitch got the file. There we go. So let me know if you're able to download the file. Yep. Okay, perfect. And then I'm going to break you out into rooms of 2. So when you open the file, what you're going to see is it's just a 2-page file. And what you're going to see is basically one side that asks questions and the other side that puts out topics about the last meal that you had out. I know this is probably not the greatest topic given that we are in the middle of a pandemic and we may not have had a meal out. And also because it's just past dinner time and it's probably going to make a few people hungry. I'm sorry. I apologize in advance. Mike, question? You're muted, buddy. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
I don't see the file.
You don't see the file? Okay, are you on a phone, Randy?
iPad.
iPad? Okay, so for our iPad friends, and I saw Matt Morris had the same issue.
Yeah, no, it's an iPad.
Okay, I'm just gonna attach all the files for this evening for you guys so that you can just refer back to your back to the email, and what you're looking for is the meal out. Okay. Mike?
I didn't get the attachment either.
Sorry, Greg? You're lagging really badly.
I didn't get the PDF either through the chat.
Okay, I'll send it to you. Mike, do you have a challenge? Still can't hear you, man. Okay, you want to type it in chat? And in the meanwhile, I'm gonna get the breakout rooms going. So basically, take a look at the PDF. Recreate. Take a look at the PDF, and you will want to talk about the questions that are on the first page or the themes that are on the second. If you need any help, give me a shout.
It's 7 minutes too?
Going for 6 minutes on this one because it's a little bit shorter.
Yep.
And rooms are open. No, you just answer the questions on the PDF, Mike. And Greg. Matt, you good, buddy?
I'm here.
Okay. I think Barbie Lee's sitting in a room waiting for you.
How's responsiveness so far?
Good. People are nodding, thumbs upping. I think the PDF distribution is a little bit of a challenge.
Okay.
It's people are not. Depends on the platform that they're on. So the iPads aren't getting them, the cell phones aren't getting them. Then you just got to scramble and email the files off to everybody, and yeah. Unfortunately, that is the easiest way to do it because they have to be able to see it when they go into the breakout room. So I can't just leave it on the slide. But it's six questions. So it's 6 questions on one page and like 6 themes on the other. Like, it's not gonna be killer. We take them until about 26.
MBTI, like DISC and a lot of others, you'll also see dominant profiles. And I'm wondering with MBTI if they've got cultural statistics, so you can look for norming based on regionality, ethnic background, etc., or if they just look for normative and for individual.
So normative sample for MBTI, gender, culture, geographic location, all those things were tested for, and basically no differences in no significant differences in distributions.
Interesting. Okay.
So at the individual dichotomy level, when you start looking at geographic region, if you take the 16 different types that form by the end of the 4 letters, there are some that are more dominant than others in North America, say compared to Asia. But if you take a look at the raw E versus I, S versus N, T versus F, J versus P, everywhere it's universal.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. We'll be able to edit some of this after, but just chatting to Ashley real quick at that last little break when she popped back in from putting Dexter down. And I was asking her what she's using for engagement. She said she's obviously going to be using you a whole bunch now, but she's been using Talasher. She found the link and sent it to me, and I'm like, yay. So,
well, I was just talking to the person that she's co-organizing Future with, the conference, and the company that actually made me the job offer was the employee engagement survey company that Government of Alberta, City of Edmonton, U of A, they all used them. So if I know their process inside and out, and I think there's better ways to do it. So, because that's one of the things that I asked during the interview. So if you make me a job offer, would you be open to doing things a little bit to my recommendations?
What'd they say?
They're like, yeah. I didn't believe them, but they were like, yeah.
I will lie to you in an interview and tell you anything you need to hear from either side of the table just long enough to get the job. Yes.
Pretty much. Oh no, I wasn't telling them what they wanted to hear. I was telling them what I wanted to tell them. That's the advantage of having a job while looking for a job. Whiskey or scotch?
No, soda water and a little bit of cranberry juice.
Oh, okay.
During the week I'm on my calorie restricted diet. So
okay.
And I've got a whole macros whole macros enabled diet. So I've got my carb, protein, and fat layers down really good. And this is my indulgence for the evening. I got a little bit of cranberry juice in the water because I've gone through the milk that I get for the day, and that's it.
Okay.
And otherwise, it's nothing but water. I'd love this to be full of beer, but I have to drink at least 4 of these a day. I have to get about 112 ounces of water in me. So,
Okay.
no, I'd love to have gone into the Scotch, but I didn't think that would. We're doing personality profiling. Wonderful. I'm drinking Scotch.
Wouldn't be the first time I've done it.
No.
Oh, when I was doing the facilitation training for MBTI through the actual company, there was one night that me and the facilitator went out for a couple of drinks. I was like, I feel sorry for you because you got a teach day 4. I just have to sit through it. We were in Vancouver. He's from the San Diego, so whenever he comes here, we always catch up and go for a few drinks. But he's not coming here for the next little while.
No. Now here's frightening. We're not allowed overseas into Europe right now because Canada's on the no travel list because of COVID. Yet the Americans want us to open the border.
Well, world politics, eh?
Yeah. That's fine. Come on down. Yeah.
Alrighty, folks. I think that's everybody.
We just finished. It was like good timing, Justin.
Nice. It didn't feel like a Mitch 6 minutes.
No, definitely not.
Okay, just checking. So if you can see my screen again, the slides. So let's talk about that a little bit. So what was the difference between the yellow and the green cards? Did you notice a difference?
At first, I didn't. I thought there was just the one card, right? So
Okay.
we did the first one first, and then look, there's a yellow one.
Okay.
I didn't know there were 2 cards.
Okay.
You said answer the questions. There was no questions on the next page. I didn't answer anything.
Oh, the questions and the themes, and talked about the
No,
themes
you
on the
said
second
answer
page.
the questions. So there was questions on the first page. The
But if
second
you had
page was a good
intuition, you
pictogram.
would have just known.
No,
Thinking
I
can
follow
guess
instructions.
where Barbie is. That's what I think. I think I can guess where she is on the quadrants.
Yeah.
Okay.
I might surprise you.
For those of you who did end up doing both pages, which page felt easier to talk about?
I'd probably say that the first page was easier for me,
Yeah.
but I have a more direct style, whereas the second page felt more abstract, felt more theoretical, felt more like, let's just have a conversation. So we got to both pages, but the first one was a little bit more, okay, to the point, let's find out more about you kind of idea.
Okay. Anyone prefer the second page? Randy.
Well, now that I see it, I would have.
Oh, we had fun chatting about the second page. So.
Okay. And it's really funny because I'm thinking about the profiles a little bit, and I'm like, I'm seeing it. So, these are the predictions that I would have made, knowing the final answer in the end. So, and from the listening side of things, which one was easier to listen to? Which one made more sense to listen to? And similar to Ashley's comments about she liked the straight to the point kind of thing, which one was easier for you?
Definitely the yes.
First page.
First page?
Mm-hmm.
They both worked.
Second page for me.
Okay.
Yeah, they both worked.
Both worked. Okay.
I just find the second page is more deeper. Do you know what I mean? So you get to know someone more intimately, I guess.
It's more authentic. I don't know.
Yeah.
Less forced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Like
second page was harder to get into because by the time you got to it, you knew you were rushing the clock. So it's just like you can't fully dive into it.
Yeah, it was weird. It was like your brain reset when you got to the second page and you're like, what am I supposed to talk about?
Okay, so maybe a little bit more time next time than the 6 minutes. But essentially, when we're talking about that first page, that green page, that's the sensing page. So somebody with a sensing preference is likely to dive into the details to the points first. So there's a circle, a square, and a star there. And without talking about the picture as a whole, they may overlook the patterns. Somebody with that preference for intuition is likely to see that bigger picture, that overall shape, the theme. They're arranged as a triangle. But sometimes they might miss some of those details. So again, just like with the E and the I, which one do you think you are, S or N?
S.
I'm gonna ask.
Probably S.
Okay.
I know I'm an N, but based on that exercise, I turned out to be an S.
Well, here's another one for you, Wes. Which type of instructions do you like? Consider when you're assembling IKEA furniture. Do you like the step-by-step instructions, or do you just prefer to work it out yourself?
I'm with Wes. What are you talking about? What's this thing you're talking about? Instructions. Give me
Okay. So I'd like you to point out the right-hand side of this slide where the intuitives like the big picture, and I'll just work my way towards that.
Yeah.
Some other people may actually prefer the instructions. I like the instructions.
I like the instructions.
I'm a sensor. So
You like both.
You like both?
Yeah, like I like to be able to like look at something and go, yeah, I can build that, but then I have the instructions there in case I get stuck.
Exactly. Okay, that's fair. That's a good backup strat.
I've managed IKEA, and I can tell you, yeah, I would like to do N, but I know better to do green.
Okay.
I'm with you, Randy.
I personally believe that IKEA has screwed us up, and we should all just play with Lego. That's all I'm saying, and not the box sets.
Okay. That's a different conversation for a different day, Barbie Lee. I'm sorry, we don't have time to explore that one, but I think we need to at some point. So let's move on to thinking versus feeling. So those with this is what types of information you like to work with to make your decisions. So with the thinking side, those with a thinking preference like to focus on tasks a little bit more. As Mitch said, that task orientation, that task focus a little bit earlier. They like to use cause and effect. They like to use logic. They like facts and figures. They like to be impersonal. And this is where some conflict can come in, because those with a feeling preference like to focus on the relationship. They want to be more people oriented. They want to understand the values and the viewpoints. That's what's important. And now what's really interesting is that as they approach tasks, as they make decisions, they both come to the same conclusion. They have done it in a fair manner. They both have the goal of being fair when making decisions, but how they arrive at the decision, the information that they use is different. So this is where intentions may be misunderstood. This is where conflict can sometimes arise. So what I'm going to do, and some of you have it in your emails already, I'm going to put up another PDF, and this one's more of a solo activity. So those who have an introversion preference, you're going to love this a little bit. You're going to like this one a little bit more. So I'm going to provide the PDF in the chat window. And okay. And basically what you're going to see in the PDF is a scenario. Read through the scenario, and then you're going to see those two choices for the different statements. Mark down which one you like, which one aligns more with how you would approach that situation, and then we'll see. I'll unveil the answers a little bit in a few. If anyone can't get the scenario, let me know. I'll send it through email.
See things through my eyes, that one?
Yes. Greg, I did send you all the files through email. So if you take a look at the email, and it will be the one labeled see things through my eyes.
I haven't received anything yet.
Okay. I will try again. I see Matt McLean is going the old school route with by printing it out. Nice. Any luck, Greg? Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Just as a point of reference, who's already finished? Okay, couple people. Okay, give you about 2 or 3 minutes more. Anyone still going? Anyone still need more time?
I just need a minute or two more.
Okay. Alrighty, for the sake of time, we're gonna have to continue on. So if you haven't finished up yet, don't look. Everybody can see my screen, I'm guessing, yes? Okay, so here were the, based on what you answered, here's what each answer aligned with. I see Ashley laughing and smiling. I sense there is a disturbance in the force. Ashley.
No, I just feel like I knew exactly. I feel like I'm all of the same color, and I apologize to anybody on this call that I have offended with my style.
Okay.
Because, I think as much as this is a really good opportunity to learn each other's style, it gives you a harsh sense of self-awareness to go, okay, yeah, I have to be a little bit more mindful. I have to be a little bit more cognizant, right? But it's also, as I'm sure you're already have talked about or going to talk about, it's important not to label people. So I'm labeling myself. But anyways, I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah, it's rough when you're like all the T's. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm like, oops, I'm all the T's. But like, I'm not a jerk, so I understand. I'm like, wait, now we have to do feelings. But like, my thought comes first all the time.
So, and if I may ask, I'm super confused, and my report would suggest that I am confused because I'm half and half. So, is that a good thing, a bad thing, or what does that mean? And don't tell my wife.
I'm also pretty much down the middle.
Okay, no, that's interesting. That's good. Because what we're seeing is some people have a clear distinct preference. Some people have maybe have a starting point, but maybe throughout your life, Matt, you've figured out ways that in the scenario, I can't go with my gut feeling. I can't go with my gut reaction. This is and over time you've developed. And that's what I said at the beginning. It's not that you're stuck to one side or the other. You have a place that you start. You have a place that you're more comfortable, but you can learn how to use the other side. TF is one of those things, especially in relationships, in marriage. If you are, especially if you're married to if you're a T who's married to an F, you tend to develop a stronger sense of that F preference and a stronger ability to be able to harness it. So that's where you can start to hit that 50-50. And as a spoiler, if I did this, as a small spoiler, if I did this prior to all of my psychology training, I would have been answering all T's. Now I'm split 50-50. So it depends on your experience and how you've been able to actually learn how to harness the other side. But here's something, and I anticipated that, here's something to clarify a little bit. Here's something to really help you understand where you will like to start your decision making. T's, when they are really looking at a situation, trying to help solve a problem, trying to resolve a scenario, they're going to be the person who's going to step back and really look at everything from the outside. They're going to take the outsider's perspective. Those with a feeling preference will step into the situation. They're going to want to connect with each person and figure out what the impacts of the situation is on them, rather than looking at how does this situation impact everybody as a whole from the outside. Those with a T preference, a thinking preference, want to step back and detach themselves. Also, and this might start to make a lot of sense when you think about that friend who just wants to solve problems for you. Those with a T preference, they want to help somebody by fixing the problem. When they see something, they're going to take a look at it. They're going to analyze it. How can I fix this? Somebody with a feeling preference, just looking for that empathy. When they come to you with a problem, I want you to listen to it and understand, be supportive, be empathetic, but I don't particularly need you to solve it. How many of you have heard that one before? Yep. So now you're seeing, and you may have been the one to say it. It's fair. So that's where you can really start to understand, how is somebody making their decisions? Are they T or are they F? And based on all this, for yourself, are you T or are you F? And jot it down.
Justin, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Do you find that your style changes at all based on whether you're in work mode or personal mode, or is that common, or is that just showing that you're not your authentic self in one or the other?
What ends up happening is you learn to adapt. You learn how to flex a little bit away from your natural tendencies. So to use the HR example specifically, if you're a T in a people-oriented environment, you'll learn how to flex a little bit. You'll learn how to adapt. It's not that your preference changes. It's that you've learned how to work within the framework. You've learned how to work with a slightly different style. And if you're around that style all the time, you're going to learn how to harness that a little bit more effectively.
That's like saying you're using your opposite hand then, right?
Yes.
It's not natural to you, but you've learned it to be natural.
Yeah, it's basically like how. Thank you, Laura. That's the perfect example, because it's basically like how you can train yourself to write with your non-dominant hand. It's just not as natural. It's not as comfortable.
That was your example.
Does this vary with like managers and owners? Because like in my head, like going through this, I feel like I should be like a T, but like all my answers are basically Fs, and maybe it's because like when I look at the answers, I'm thinking about it from the standpoint of like, oh, if it's an employee or a colleague of mine, like I need to, like, I just looked at it from an F perspective.
Yep. And that's that adaptation, that flexing your style. You may not be, you may be an F preference, you may not be, but given that you were looking at within a specific context, I would say that's probably a bigger example of you flexing your style. Any other questions? Perfect. So we're going to jump into the last one, judging versus perceiving. So those with the judging preference, I think the next slide actually just kind of summarizes it way better. So I'm just going to jump straight there. Those with the judging preference want to get from point A to point B in a very planned, step-by-step, methodical manner. Okay, here's our planning, then we're going to execute. Here's our planning, then we're going to execute. Those with a perceiving preference, they like to gather information until it's time to execute. They want to remain flexible. They want to remain open to react to changing circumstances. So what you see with the P line is that it's going along with activity, thinking, planning, looping back to gather information. And then right at the very end, there's this flurry of activity where they finally actually execute everything. And in the end, you get from point A to point B in the same amount of time, but the way you get there is a little bit different. So for those of you who are looking at P like it's a foreign concept, think about that friend in school who just used to cram all night for and still ace the exam. They're probably a P. They were able to think about it and loop back and really figure it out. And then at the very end, they pulled an all-nighter or they studied for a couple hours, and then they ended up with the same score when you were sitting there studying little by little and planning and cramming and planning it out, and you ended up with the same mark. This starts to explain things. So I was telling Mitch a little bit earlier, normally the activity I would do for this is a really fun one, but unfortunately it involves Play-Doh. So I had to switch it with another one, but unfortunately this also is not pandemic friendly. So I apologize again. All of my activities are not pandemic friendly. So we're gonna take a look at this, and I'm gonna set up the breakout rooms, but this time you get to choose which breakout room you're gonna go into. So how comfortable would you be if I told you I will pay, and I'm not actually doing this, just clarifying, I will pay for your dream vacation right now, but you have to leave right now. You don't get to think about it. You have to leave right away, and that's it. You're at the airport. You're going. Consider COVID too, but COVID be damned. You just gotta go. So I'm gonna set up 3 breakout rooms. If you're comfortable with this, go to breakout room 1. If you're not comfortable with this, go to breakout room 2. If you're not sure, or you're somewhere in between, go to breakout room 3. And what I want you to do is discuss how you made this decision. What got you to say, I want to go into breakout room 1 because I'm comfortable? How'd you arrive at the decision? Were there any caveats? Now, if you're in, say, breakout room 1 and somebody's really debating it, you're free to kick them out and tell them maybe you need to go to room 3. Because if they're not clear that they're comfortable with it, they might be somewhere in between. And I'm going to go to room 3 if I see people in there and talk you through it. Okay, so I am going to stop sharing and I am going to set up the breakout rooms with, you can choose the room and there's 3 of them. So 1 if you're comfortable, 2 if you're not, and 3 if you're somewhere in between.
Oh, this is exciting.
I see some folks still thinking it through.
How do we pick the room?
There's nothing.
Yeah, how do we
nothing
pick the
popped
room?
up, Justin.
If you click the breakout rooms button.
What breakout rooms button? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, there's nothing there.
Some people actually got into there. Some people are still making it into there.
I'm trying to figure that out.
I'm looking. I don't see anything on my desktop.
Is this like a hidden quiz?
Maybe. let me. I'll be back in a second. Let me.
The business.
Sorry to cut you off. How did you guys end up joining this breakout room?
So when I hit breakout room,
Yeah.
right, you hit breakout room, and it says breakout room. If you scroll over towards the end of the top person that's in the room, you can click on it. It'll say join.
Okay. So you click breakout rooms and then scroll over to.
Yeah, so I clicked breakout rooms. It shows the 3. I seen Jackson was in there. I tried to click on him. I couldn't, but I could scroll past his name. Like at the end of his name, I could click a little button and drop box
Okay.
it to join.
There's a join box, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. People are not able to find it. I'm seeing it here, but they can't find it, so I wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Let's go for it. So
Alrighty. So if you're trying to join the breakout room, if you click breakout rooms,
Where's the breakout room button?
maybe at the bottom or at the top, you'll see things like chat, like reactions. Do you have anything like that?
I have reactions. I see reactions, but I see no breakout room thing.
Interesting. Okay, so some people have it, some people don't. Okay, so let's do it this way. Barbie Lee, which room do you want to be in?
I'm a 1.
You're a 1. Okay, assigned to 1. Ben, which room?
1, please.
Room 1. Greg, which room?
1, please.
Jessica, which room? 3. Okay. Justin, which room? 1. Okay. Lynn?
3.
3. Okay. Matt Hewson? 1. Okay. Mike?
3.
3. Okay. Randy?
3.
3. And Scott? 1. Okay. Mitch, you want in?
No, I want to watch, just like always.
Yeah, some people had it, some people didn't. Poor Laurette's in a room by herself. Oh, jeez, I'm gonna go visit Laurette and talk to her a little bit. Laurette, you're the only person here. Like, no one else wanted to join.
I wouldn't. There's no way. Like, my holiday is like a home holiday, and I just went on a holiday, so I'm like, F no. Like, you can't pay me to go on holidays. I love working. Like, work is my holiday, so I'm just like, nope.
So doesn't matter what vacation I throw at you, you would not join. You would not go. And barring COVID aside.
Yeah, I also have a heart condition, and routine is easy. When you change things up for me, it's really difficult. So I would need to think about it. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I didn't think I was going to be the only one.
I'm going to let you in on a little something. So there's a lot more P's in this group than there are J's.
Oh, I'm a damn J.
So write down J. And if you want to join Mitch in the main room, just so you have somebody to chat with, because no one else is joining. So.
And I'm an effing strong J. JJJ all the way. So I'm like, I knew I was going to be in this room. As soon as you're like, stay home, I'm like, 2. So yeah, I'm going to leave the room now, Justin.
All right. So I'll see you back in the main room. You may as well go chat with Mitch because no one's coming here. So
yeah.
Okay, see ya.
Is the caveat, right? Like if Justin's paying for it and if he's paying for it, but I still have my cell phone and can manage shit while I'm gone, then fuck it, I'm gone. But I mean, if it's like a true blue like dream vacation where everything turns off and I'm free for 4 weeks, like it's definitely not something that I can do instantaneously because it's just my business doesn't. I have 4 employees that I have to coordinate and manage and take care of also. Like I can't leave them.
The unknown of what would happen.
Yeah.
I love it.
I want you to share that back in the main room, Mike, because I think there's so many people in room 1 that they need to hear that. So, okay. I'm going to jump there, and then I'm going to close up the room. So should be closing in about 2 minutes or so. But keep talking.
A vacation, and you don't know until the day of. You open a card, and it tells you to go here. And then when you get there, you open up the next card, says, now you're doing this, and then...
Are you guys giving each other vacation ideas now?
Yeah.
No, Justin, we're already on the plane. Barbie Lee's flying it. You are parachuting out the back because you missed the flight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like we're gone.
Okay.
Just
awesome.
leave your credit card behind. We're good to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I want you guys to share some of those thoughts when we get back to the main room, because there are quite a few undecided people, and they're going to share their arguments. So we're going to jump back to the main room in a minute or two, but gather your thoughts.
Okay.
No. That's the PG version of it while we're on Justin's training session. So,
Rose, I can't even imagine, because is it a pretty rip roaring conversation, Justin, in the room?
In room 1, they are already on the plane.
Oh.
They are figuring out how they can keep the vacation very fresh and exciting. So yeah, and room 3 is just like thinking about everything that they need to do. So
So you did kick people out and put them in room 3.
I left because they were talking about Barbie Lee being a nudist. Fucking out.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, no, that's fair.
That's fair. I was the only one in room 2, Scott.
Yeah.
Laura was all there by herself.
I thought you were like this, hopeless romantic that throws caution to the wind, who has a journey, right?
Oh, God.
The path of the journey is crooked. It's not straight.
I talk big, okay? Sometimes the journey is in your home and in your mind. I don't need to go on holiday.
All right. Now how this conversation started for everybody. Laurette was the only one in room 2.
Like the only
So the only one in room 2. So Laurette, can you tell us a little bit more about how you ended up in room 2?
I'm a strong J. I have to think about things deeply before I do anything. And I like routine. Like if you give me routine, I'm super happy. If you change anything about my routine, I'm mad. Like there's no way. So like I couldn't just up and go. That like to me breaks my whole essence of me being. I'm like, no, we think about this for at least a day. Like I just, wise people think. You don't just go, you know what I mean? There's a routine to things. You have to think about it before you do it. So
Don't put our intelligence down saying we're not wise.
I know, I'm a strong J. That's a problem. Like I get it.
You need to follow the script then.
Yes, I have to. I learned one of my first jobs ever. It was a script job. I did market research. You followed that damn script. That's it. So like, yes, like even market research.
Talking about the script I gave you.
Yes, cold calling, that's my script. And like I use your script all the time.
All right, so those who end up in room 1, how did you end up there?
You moved me.
Oh, okay. What decision drove you to end up in room 1?
It was an easy decision.
That I would like nothing more than to be on a beach right now. Even if I'm working, I will be on a beach gladly.
I've done it before.
Okay, Scott's done it before. So how about room 3? Take me through the conversation that you had.
Well, for me, like it was, my big one was like, there's questions that I have that I don't have an answer to, but I mean, ultimately, without those answers, I don't know, because like if I still have phone access, then sure, like I could drop of a hat and potentially go do that. But I mean, it's no different if a client calls and needs something. I know Jackson's had similar situations in recent weeks. But I mean, if it was, you can't take your phone, you can't take your computer, and you can't talk to anybody, like my business would literally die. Like and I'm also responsible for, besides like my wife who's on here right now, but I mean, like besides her, like I also have 4 employees and their families and everything that's going on with them, and I have responsibilities to them. Like, I can't just let the business die and screw them over also. So like, there's a ton of other questions that also would be required to have at least some confirmation of before I could just take off. And so I wasn't sure.
No, that's perfect. That's exactly why I created room 3 for those, because if you'd asked those questions up front, I would have just put you in room 3. So that's the point. So that's the thing. You can see how some of you were just like, yeah, great, I'll deal with things as they come, versus I want to plan, I want to structure things out a little bit more first. Now, all of you should have maybe heard the ding of your phone, should have gotten your email, but before you dig into that, J or P, decide that first. Once you decide that, open up that PDF. I see Matt McLean's getting it printed off. So, and then take a look at page 2 of your results.
I had to grab paper.
Yeah. And what I want you to consider when you're taking a look at page 2, are they the same? Is what you wrote down, is your guess the same as what you got in your report? If not, we can talk about that a little bit more because we're running out of time. We're now going to overtime a little bit. So I'm going to double time the rest of the rest of this. But the conversation was great. I think you got some insight into communication with others. But I'm going to wrap it all up in a neat little bow over the next couple of slides, and then send you with some homework, with a little bit of homework. But if they didn't turn out the same, let's have a conversation about that. Let's see why. If they came out exactly as you predicted, then awesome. This report is going to hone in on everything about you in communication pretty directly. So now if it didn't turn out, and the reason why I ask if it's different, let's have that conversation, because if it means getting you a different report, then we can proceed down that route. So now you have that framework. So whenever I had my first meeting with most of you, and I will be doing this, or I have already done this with those that I haven't had my first meeting with, this is the framework that I put everybody through in my head in that conversation. I was paying attention to these 4 different dichotomies as we were talking to figure out where you fit in. And when I looked through the results, I think I identified most, if not all of you, that I've had conversations with. So these are the things, once you're able to identify, and the next section is applying what you've just learned, the how to and what to look for. So you won't need your report results. I'm going to give you the breakdown of exactly what I look for to figure out what's your style and how do I need to communicate according to it. So basically 4 aspects to consider. How does the conversation start? How does it proceed? What is the flow of the conversation? This is going to tell you your E and your I. What's the information that the other person is talking about? What type of information do I need to speak to? That's the S and the N. How do they present the information? That's the T and the F. And what's the focus of the conversation? And I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. So when we're taking a look at extroversion versus introversion, I'm looking for things like this. An extrovert will talk through the issue, verbalizing their thoughts as they think. A lot of extroverts do that. I know Mitch does that. I do that. You should hear our conversations. It's just us talking and not talking to each other, just talking. So when you ask them for their opinion, their thoughts, their views, they share right away. And then notice I talk with my hands a lot. I'm moving my hands a lot. That's not just because I'm on a Zoom call. That's because that's how I actually present. That's how, and most of you have probably seen me do this a lot when I'm talking. Introverts, if you ask them a question, they're going to stop. They're going to think about it. there's going to be that moment of silence that extroverts can find very awkward. And this is where some of the communication challenges come in. When a question is thrown out there, there's this moment of silence, and then the extroverts feel like they need to fill it. Sometimes with introverts and at work, I'm on a team of introverts. I'm the only extrovert. So when a question gets thrown out there, it's dead silent. And I know I need to give them time to think. When they have thought their way through it, then they will give the answer that they have really processed and they have come up with. And there may be differences in the body language and the expression between extroverts and introverts, where extroverts may be a little bit more expressive, introverts may be a little bit more reserved with their actual hand motions, with their body language. They may be a little bit harder to read with their body language. You just have to see their body language is a little bit more subtle. Okay, so that's E versus I. S versus N, what I'm looking for are things like, are they talking about the facts, the here and the now? Are they talking about reality a lot? And are they being specific? If take a look at your approach. If you're an S, if the person's providing you with enough detail, they're probably an S also. If you're an N and they're providing too much detail, they're probably an S. Somebody with an intuitive approach is going to be thinking about the bigger picture. They're going to seek out those new ideas. They're going to be talking about the future, possibilities. So if you're an N and somebody is talking about the future possibilities and this excites you, this other person may be an N also. If they're talking about the details and they're boring you, they're probably a sensor. Making sense so far? Okay. Thinking versus feeling, this is a lot easier to figure out. Thinking types, when they're given the opportunity to critique something, will point out faults, and that's their way of being helpful, by pointing out the faults, by critiquing. They want to solve the problem, so they have to identify it first. Those with a feeling preference will start by providing the support. So look at where that conversation starts. Are they starting with the critique, or are they starting with the positive, the good things, the support? Do they want to solve the problem, or is it just a conversation? That's how you can figure things out very quickly. If you're talking about a problem, do they step back and approach it from a outsider's point of view, or do they step into it? And that's how you can figure out T versus F. And then the focus of the conversation. So one big thing that I look for, judging versus perceiving. Judging, those with a judging preference use decisive words. Concluded, decided, planned. Past tense, typically. Those with a perceiving preference, concluding, deciding, planning. Things that are active. The other thing that I look for is whether somebody likes to get closure by the end of the conversation. If you have a judging preference, you probably want closure by the end of that conversation. You want to know, what's the next steps? How do I proceed? If the person is comfortable with kind of discussing different things, going on different tangents, and they're okay with things emerging, the details emerging a little bit later, there's probably a little bit more of a P preference. They're waiting to see what details are coming up. Does that make sense also? Okay. So your homework, if you want to dive a little bit further, and if your guess and your results don't agree, this is where you're going to really find out whether or not you need to have a chat with me. Page 9 is going to talk about your communication style specifically, specific to the responses that you gave. Not talking about the broad E versus I, S versus N, T versus F, J versus P. Those are in the guts of the report, the middle of the report. This is going to talk about your style as a whole based on the responses that you gave. This is your style, page 9, and then page 10 gives a little bit more detail and a little bit more in terms of development. So this is where I want you to take a look over that. If page 9 makes a lot of sense to you, page 10 is going to tell you how you specifically can improve your communication, how you can specifically make your message a little bit more clear, and that's personalized to you. If page 9 doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you, let's talk, because then we got to dive a little bit further in that case. Take a look at what your strengths are, take a look at what your challenges are, and put down one thing on the tips for improvement for I want to work on this over the next before Christmas. Take a look at this and see if there's opportunities to implement it into your conversations, into what you're doing. It could be with your family, it could be with colleagues, it could be with clients. See what's there and work with it a little bit. If you need some guidance around how to do it, let me know. I'll have that conversation with you happily. But take a look, read through. That self-awareness is invaluable, and that will help you build awareness of others. So that's everything that I had for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Before I pass everything over to Mitch, what I'm going to say is, if you want to dive further, this is only one level down in your personality. This is the big picture of your personality. There are 2 levels deeper that we can go with MBTI by itself, yet alone other personality assessments. So if there's something that interests you in going a little bit deeper to understand yourself a little bit more, let's have that conversation, and we can figure out how to get that ball rolling. So that's just the sales pitch for the night. So gotta plug it, right? Also, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and the folks that I've emailed already have it. I'm going to put one more file for you in the chat box. Because I know what we talked about in the last few slides might have been a little bit quick and might have been a little bit overwhelming. So that is a PDF that contains pretty similar information to what was on the slides. So you can take a look over it and see, oh, how can I use this? What can I remember? What points can I look at? And as you're having a conversation with somebody, it's okay to have it just behind your screen, looking through, oh, are they a sensor or intuitive? Do I need to talk specifics or big picture? You can use it as a little cheat sheet. So it's there for you. If you need this file, send me an email. Happy to email to you. Otherwise, to that, thank you everyone for joining. I will pass the floor back over to Mitch, and we will conclude for the night.
Justin, an exceptional display, and thank you very much for being able to share what it is that you are exceptionally talented at, skilled at, and educated for, because it comes down to premium education. Know thyself, and therefore know what to do as you move forward in the world. This changes the way you choose to communicate with other people, because now you can think, how am I going to perceive this? And more importantly, as I start to listen and pay better attention to more and more cues that come from other people, over time, you get better at understanding what it is and the way you need to communicate with them best to find the best results amongst them. On behalf of the Cyndicate leadership team, Justin, thank you very much for launching a Cyndicate Talks Season 2 so effectively, so wonderfully, and with such exceptional quality material. On behalf of myself, Ali, and Ben, on behalf of the entire Cyndicate family, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Watch for this episode, of course, on YouTube and other places in the cyberspace world where you can, of course, enjoy that education. Follow up with Justin and his company, Culture Shift, to learn more about yourself, your organization, and your people. And of course, curious about Cyndicate, come and join us. This is a Cyndicate Talks Season 2, Episode 1. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in just 10 days' time for Episode 2 coming up soon. Have a wonderful evening.
Take care, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.